Hey everybody, this is Aaron with Scent of Samadhi, and today we got a little treat, right? So I kind of went through this weird little phase where I really wanted to just kind of stop doing reviews altogether. I had some couple bad weeks, man, that you know, saw I think some less than desirable aspects of the perfume community, and I'm somebody who does take this stuff very seriously. This is my passion. This is something that is much more than just scent to me. This is definitely like an expression of who I am as a person, and so I do take things seriously, right? And you know, I originally was just going to delete this page, get rid of all of this stuff, you know, but I received so much just like positivity from so many people in this community that you know, I want to keep doing this. It's really heartwarming to know that the people out there that do care, I can truly call family and friends. And I appreciate all of you guys for all of your support. And so with that being said, I wanted to do my first oud video on just pure oud. So what we have today is Siam 4K. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, but or even if it's going to be mirror image, I'm not sure. So yeah, we have Siam 4K from Agar, as well as Myitkyina 4K, right? So my buddy Jeff was kind enough to send me a sample of Myitkyina, and I figured what better way than to do a comparison between these two amazingly heavy-hitting oils. Now, I wish I knew more about the background of Myitkyina 4K. I do not. Because Siam 4K is the one that spoke to me. So, I'm no expert by any means when it comes to oud. I don't claim to be an expert, but I do like to dissect these things, and I like to find out what I'm smelling. And there's a couple methods I've learned recently for how to properly smell oud, and that's something I wanted to go over in this video today too. And part of it came from Taha himself, you know, trying to explain two different factors of oil. You have basically what's called vertical and horizontal scent, right? And it's the way how you smell an oil, and you see its top notes, its peaks, its valleys, and things like that. And then you also see the horizontal spaciousness of the scent, which I would consider like the base notes and things like that, right? And so after he had pointed that out to me, it completely changed the way how I smell everything. Because I never looked at oud in terms of horizontal or vertical at all, right? I just would just go, oh, I like this, I don't like this. And, you know, understanding these aspects, right, the horizontal and vertical spectrum, completely gives you a 360-degree experience of what the oud smells like. And so I'm going to start with Siam 4K first. Now I'm going to put my mask on. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because these oils are incredibly intense, right? And I think with Taha's oils, they're so intense sometimes that you can go easily anosmic to it and not even realize it. And how I know that is usually around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I will put a swipe on before I go to bed. And then, you know, obviously maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night, I get in bed, and then I'll wake up the next morning at 6, 7 a.m. and I will still clearly smell these oils projecting, and not just projecting, but I'm talking, I'll be laying in bed and I'll be like, oh my God, why am I smelling Canam right now? This is crazy. And then, oh, smell my wrist. Wow, this has been 12 hours, you know, and it's still going strong. So I like to put a mask on when I do these. So we're gonna start with Siam 4K first, right? Siam 4K is what I would consider to be a reference Thai oil. And what I mean by that, this oil is the pinnacle of what the Thai region can smell like. It comes from, I'm going to completely butcher the name of the city, Rangong or something. I don't know. I just know there's a region in Thailand where the forests are absolutely ideal. and it's considered the most sought after wood in Thailand. Now, I need to make a distinction. This is wild incense grade sinensis, right? The quality of this is so spectacular that not only will it make your throat go numb, right? If you just smell it, you'll get a little tingle, kind of like you just took a throat lozenge, right? And so this tiny slight numbness. But if you take a little tiny bit of it, put it on like your hand, and then like put your tongue to it, it'll make your whole mouth go numb. It's absolutely unreal. So even with the lid open like this right now, I am still smelling this through my mask. This is that intense. So we're gonna do just a tiny little bit. So Taha says that this is most definitely a Kanamic oil. Now, I don't know exactly if he means that this is distilled from Kanam, but the little experience I do have with Kanam and Kanam-like oils, this absolutely exudes that scent of Kanam that I have smelled from burning the wood on low temperature. It's unreal when you smell anything even close to being Kanam-like, right? Okay. Wow. So even just taking my mask off now, I got hit with this huge cloud of oudiness. It's very green, it's sweet, it's bitter, right? There's an intense bitter aspect to this, very, very bitter. And you get this kind of, you get this very dry, coppery kind of twang that almost smells like hay. It's kind of interesting. It's herbal. It's very hay-like. And you get this very green, coppery twang, man. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is very sweet. This is like golden honey. And so I'm going to show you guys how Taha taught me to basically smell an oil, right? And I'm going to combine this with what's also called pranayama, where you count your breath, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to take a few deep breaths before we really dive in to smell this. And so it's going to go like this. We're going to go breathe in for 4, hold for 1 second. Breathe out for 4, hold for 1 second. So it's going to look like this. One more time. Now this is just going to set the stage to get our breath really flowing and to have our ability to actually breathe in and smell this properly. So let's do it one more time. Okay, so now we're going to smell. If that doesn't bliss you out, I don't know what will. This is why oud is so meditative. It absolutely does something to your overall demeanor, to your psyche. I know some people say that it's all made up, that mind buzz isn't a thing, that it's just placebo, science says this, science says that. But there's been these really wonderful studies happening recently that show that Agar wood, essentially, Agar wood essential oil is what they call it, has the ability to cause sedation in rats, and not only cause sedation, but it promotes a very deep sleep. And it most definitely relaxes your body. And that's just among many of its important factors here, right? So to really understand Siam 4K, you also have to taste it and smell it. Now, when I smell an oil, I do a couple different things. I don't just breathe in like that, right? I do this thing where I breathe in with both my mouth and my nose at the same time. And it kind of looks like this. If any of you know how to do circular breathing, it's very similar to that aspect. And what it does is it allows you to kind of taste the air on your tongue, as well as taste the, the scent inside your nose. And it's a really beautiful thing when you actually taste it with your tongue as well and use this method. So. Every time it gets me. When you taste this, it literally tastes exactly the way how it smells. Incredibly bitter, pepper, steel, copper, honey, just this whole kaleidoscope of colors are all happening at once, and it kind of creates this explosion. It's just like, poof, like that, right? It's that beautiful. Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with Thai oils, and you probably think, okay, I've smelled every Thai I need to smell. You know, there's certain oils that were released that a lot of people say this is the most beautiful Thai oil, you know, and I'm sure that may be true for the past, right? But this sets a standard, at least in my experience, of what can happen with a Thai oil. It's not super fruity, you know, there's not a whole lot of fruit. It's mostly honey, floral. There's this interesting like green tea aspect and almost these kind of Chinese herbs. If you've ever smelled like a high quality Chinese distillation, Heilam Kilam from Ensar Oud actually comes to mind. This kind of exhibits some of these subtle nuances of ginger, pepper. You get the tiniest, and I mean the tiniest hint of anise, right? Not a whole lot, but just enough to kind of give you this overall oudiness that just feels exquisite. It's truly a step above. So now we're gonna get the Myitkyina 4K. I don't have a whole lot of this, so I'm just gonna use just a very little bit, and we'll see what happens here. I tested this out last night. I was absolutely blown away. And I'm interested to see how this stacks up. Wow, my tongue is really numb right now. It's kind of crazy. So we're gonna do just a little bit on this wrist. I wanna see how this is gonna stack up doing a side-by-side with Siam 4K. Now, I think the trick to oud oil is less is more. I'm someone with a very sensitive nose, and I can easily become overwhelmed with these things. I'm not gonna breathe in with my nose whatsoever, because right now I have a feeling I'm gonna be going a little bit anosmic. So, let's talk about Myitkyina 4K. When Taha first released this oil, kind of behind the scenes, right, you know, he had said that this is very similar to Myitkyina Gold. Now, that kind of struck me as interesting, right? Because Myitkyina Gold is an absolutely beautiful oil, right? And I think it's Burmese, right? I think it's something like that. I'm really bad at knowing the backstory of these oils because these are single origin oils distilled from a single batch of wood. There's no blending. There's no co-distillations happening. This is just pure raw wood. And so Taha had made a really interesting comparison with Myitkyina Gold. He said that this has the peaks and valleys of Myitkyina Gold, but stretched out to the absolute maximum limit that it can. So let's smell and see what we think, and then we can talk about the vertical and horizontal spectrum here. Wow. So what's interesting about Myitkyina 4K is that it almost smells like you get a tiny hint of fermentation notes in the opening. It's really crazy. You get this kind of, I don't want to say cheesy because it's not cheesy at all, right? That's going to be a really terrible way to describe this. But you get this like almost Laotian, Hindi-esque kind of hay note that almost has kind of like this bitter red feel to it. And very herbal. Wow. So going back to Siam 4K, what's interesting is that Siam 4K is exhibiting these very ozonic-like, oceanic aspects to it. This is pure nose candy, right? I saw somebody on Udic say that Siam 4K is just straight up brain candy, nose candy, whatever you want to call it. And that's true. There's a lot of pepper in this that doesn't really show on its own, but when you combine it with the scent of Myitkyina 4K, this has a very interesting opening, right? I saw somebody say that interesting is a really good way to describe oud, and I agree with that, right? Like, I usually look for these interesting oils. This almost has this kind of like Cambodian red fruit, kind of overripe red Cambodian note. L'Essential Cambodian from Agar Aura, you know, that Taha distilled a while back. This is an old Cambodian oil he did. Actually shares a kind of similar opening in a way. And granted, this is much more beautiful, right? This has intense bass notes, man. Myitkyina 4K, I would say the vertical and horizontal spectrum here are just massive, right? Like, this is very punchy, has lots of bass notes. Compared to Siam 4K, which exhibits more of like an ethereal kind of quality. There's a very ethereal, uplifting, very bright. And now this, it's not dark by any means, you know, but I'm just strictly comparing Myitkyina 4K to Siam 4K, right? To get kind of like this overall spectrum of what we're talking about here, because these are both two incredibly heavy-hitting oils. And I think for those that are wanting a deeper, more interesting, almost more raw experience, the opening of Myitkyina 4K provides just that. I mean, this is an incredible opening. Now, it takes a little while, but eventually these kind of fruits and cream shows up, right? There's even a little bit of tendrils of incensey. I don't want to say smoke, because it's not smoke at all, okay? But it is very similar to burning really high quality agar wood on low temp. And if you're familiar with that scent, that overall kind of universal oudiness, that's the best way to describe the kind of note that I'm smelling here. Lots of hay. Lots of hay. The tiniest bit of musk. And it's almost musky in textural quality as opposed to scent. It almost feels a little furry on the nose. Whereas Siam 4K, very smooth, very sweet, green, ginseng-like, right? And they're both starting to get kind of similar, right? So these oils both have similar heart notes to them. And that's something that I think is important to note, is the way how the distillation methods can bring out different nuances in the wood itself. And what I like about Taha's oils is that they stay true to the wood. He's not trying to distill notes or using techniques to coax out different nuances or to make it smell different or whatever. He's trying to give you the absolute purest agarwood experience, but in oil form. And I have tons of respect for that. So now you're getting a very deep mulled wine, ripe red and purple berry nuance with Myitkyina 4K. That's starting to show up. And all of this has just the slightest tinge of fermentation, which I usually find lacking in a lot of Taha's oils. But the more I've been diving into his past selections, I've been realizing that, you know, this whole next gen of distillation isn't just providing the absolute cleanest no-soak oils. It's not true at all. It's just providing a high quality oil experience. And it's not trying to hide any nuances or low quality wood with just tons of fermentation, right? Now, it's not to say that this doesn't have soap to it, because you can definitely smell a little bit of that. It's the most beautiful fermentation note. And I think that's something I love about Taha's oils, is the way how he distills this stuff. It's gorgeous. Where Siam 4K is completely devoid of any kind of fermentation note, right? You get a lot of vertical spectrum with Siam 4K. Now, the horizontal spectrum, the base notes, at least what I consider the base notes, really start to show up around the 1-2 hour mark, right? And so I wish in these videos I would be able to give a very full, complete assessment of the dry downs, but these oils, they're gonna last 10 hours on my skin. I can't give you the base note comparisons, right? But from what I remember last night is the heart notes do get kind of similar. The dry downs are completely different. I do feel like if you're searching for Kinam, Siam 4K is just massive Kinamic-like qualities. I would go so far as to say it is Kinam. I mean, that's exactly what it smells like. It's bitter, it's ethereal. There's this sweet, syrupy, vanilla, creamy aspect that just touches your heart, man. Like, it hits you right here. And I just can't get over that. Now, between the two, if you're searching for something a little bit more raw, deeper, a little more interesting, Myitkyina 4K is your best bet, right? Like, this is not just all bright top notes. There's a lot of bass to this. Now, if you want something a little more ethereal, now it's not lacking bass notes whatsoever. I mean, there's bass notes here. It's just not as booming as Myitkyina 4K. Siam 4K is a little more friendly. It's a little more inviting. It's pure ethereal beauty, right? It's like it's synesthesia of color. When you close your eyes, you see pinks and golds and greens, and it's just like the UV spectrum, man. I mean, it's like an oil slick, you know, but when you close your eyes, it's unreal. Whereas Myitkyina gives more of a kind of a red and purple vibe, in my experience anyways. I wouldn't say that this is an overly green oil, but in fact it has a little more deep fermented fruit vibe to it. Whereas Siam 4K is more citrusy, honey, herbal goodness. This is deep red wine, berries, and you know, dark compote and balsamic kind of notes, right? Absolutely wonderful stuff, totally beautiful. Both of these are stunning in every sense of the word, and I feel very honored to be able to even try these. Siam 4K was actually the very first major oud oil purchase that I've ever done, and you know, it packs a price tag of like $7.95, but for what it is, I don't think there's another oil in this same price range that's a Thai that can beat this oil. That's just my opinion. For a wild Thai, this is it. It doesn't get better, you know? For Myitkyina, I wish I knew more about it. I wish I had the description directly in front of me, and I don't. I know it's Burmese, I think. And it's awesome, you know? I think fans of Cambodians will love Myitkyina. And that's not to say that this is a Cambodian oil or that it even smells Cambodian. I just think if you're a fan of Cambodians, you will absolutely love this. And if you're like me and wanted to have a reference Thai in your collection, Siam 4K is it. So I hope I made myself clear in a lot of this and I didn't get a little too out there, you know. These breathing techniques I do think are lovely and work wonders for experiencing oud. So I highly implore you to try these techniques yourself, and just notice that when you breathe in for 5 seconds, or even 10 seconds, if you can make it that long, you can almost see the oil in front of you like this, right? And it starts here and it goes all the way to the back end. And when you do that, you get the full spectrum of scent instead of just going, you know, oh, that's it. It's like, no, no, no. And you can just see the notes pile up as it progresses. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know I did. I had a lot of fun. So thanks, y'all. It's my first video back, and I'm probably going to be switching my focus to oud from now on, you know. So, hey, have a good day.